Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randle and Gus Kearns.
Welcome back to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast, where the train continues, folks, to preview each and every one of the 357 Division I basketball teams. I'm your host, Mike Randle. Please follow me on Twitter at RandleRant. Today, we're going to go to Purdue. We're going to go to West Lafayette because the Boilermakers have quite a team coming back. They're going to be at the top of the top 25 across the country. And we brought in Mike Carmin from the Journal Courier. He covers Purdue football, Purdue basketball, and he's going to join us here for a few minutes to talk about the Boilermakers. Follow him on Twitter at Carmin_JC. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. How you doing today?
Pleasure to be with you. Thanks for reaching out.
Looking at last year, Mike, we're based out of New Jersey, and a team that I had my eye on was Purdue. They had a lot of players coming back. They had some good young talent as well. How did this season go? COVID challenged everyone. How did it affect Purdue here as they battled through and navigated a year that no one had ever experienced before?
Well, just like everybody else, they had some issues they had to deal with. They lost one of their better – they lost a starter for 2 or 3 games, Sasha Stefanovic, in mid-January.
Yep.
But just the overall dealing with COVID, no fans in the stand, the travel requirements. After a while, you get used to it. They get used to it, and they, you're just playing basketball. They had a really good year, maybe a better year than a lot of people expected based on the youth that they had, the lack of seniors on the team, and just what else was going on in the Big Ten at that time. But, they got things going in the Big Ten, good enough to finish in the top 4, get a double bye. It didn't work out for them because they lost the first game, and then they turn around and lose the first game of the NCAA tournament. So the season kind of ended a little bit with a whimper because they had put together a pretty good regular season. But everybody always had their eye on what was going to come next, and that's this season. They did lose a couple guys in the transfer market, but I don't think they're going to be significant, and they welcome in 2 extremely talented freshmen that are going to play a lot of minutes this year. So, last year was a great experience for the freshmen that they had on the team with Jaden Ivey, Zach Edey, Brandon Newman, Mason Gillis were redshirt freshmen. So they have the experience, they have the talent. They have just about everything in place to put together a much better season this year and, potentially make a deep run in the tournament.
Mike, I will tell you where I really started to think this team was coming together quickly. And like you said, end of the year wasn't the way the Boilermaker fans would have wanted. But there was that stretch in the middle of the year, early January. They played 4 consecutive road games: Rutgers, Illinois, Michigan State, Indiana. I thought that they would be drained. I did not think they would get the Michigan State game, which was a great comeback. They got the Indiana game as well. There was a 4-game win streak. They beat Ohio State twice this year. And ending the regular season, like you said, Michigan State, Nebraska, Penn State, Wisconsin, Indiana, that was an impressive run. Obviously, tournament didn't go the way you would like, but I think, Mike, that laid the groundwork that we see what this year could be based on those sort of moments they had last year.
Yeah, the really defining moment was the Michigan State game up in East Lansing when they were down by 19 points at some point, I think, and then Trevion Williams just carried them in the second half, which he did a couple times last year. That kind of pushed them in the right direction, I think that's kind of when they grew up a little bit, and they were able to let their freshmen also kind of play at times and not put too much restrictions on them. And Jaden Ivey's a guy you don't want to put restrictions on. And you kind of let him play through some things. And I think he figured some stuff out on his own. And I think that really helped them as they got a little bit deeper into the Big Ten season.
They have a tremendous team returning. Only lost a couple players here for the departures. I believe Aaron Wheeler and Emmanuel Duona were the only ones who transferred out. Those are the 2 that left, right? And the rest of them, they're coming back.
Correct. Wheeler was playing the 4, and probably is going to have a reduced role this coming season. So it was a mutual parting. He's at St. John's. He's going to play a lot more minutes. He's going to be more of a factor on that team. But based on what Purdue has coming back, what they have coming in, Aaron wasn't going to play a lot of minutes at the 4 for Purdue. It's too bad. He's a really good player, really good person. If you remember back when they made it to the Elite Eight, he was the guy that would come off the bench, whether it was against Tennessee or Virginia, hit some shots, kept him in the game, good energy guy off the bench. But in a starting role, it just never worked out for him. And therefore, it's his best. He's closer to his hometown in Connecticut. And, I think it'll work out really well for him.
And the players coming back, they are loaded across the board. Trevion Williams is somehow, Mike, still underrated across the country on his impact. Just an old school throwback 4 that can dominate a game in a way that most players cannot. Jaden Ivey has had a fantastic summer. Really has been doing some incredible things that we've seen on social media, in the news. Zach Edey, Stefanovic, like you said, battled COVID, but a lights-out shooter across the board. Eric Hunter dynamic. I can go on and on. I mean, one of the strongest cores returning here of any team across the country.
The one thing you kind of need to look at in the summer is that Jaden Ivey and then one of their incoming freshmen, Caleb First, played for Team USA in the U19 championships over in Latvia, and they ended up winning it. But also Zach Edey played for Team Canada in the same tournament. Edey was close to making the Canadian Olympic team. In a way, it was a blessing that he did not, because Canada did not qualify for the Olympics. Therefore, he got to play more games in the U19 and just had a tremendous tournament. He averaged a double-double in every game. There were a couple games where he was just the best guy on the floor. So those 3 guys picked up some valuable experience, some international experience that they brought back with them, and I think that will really help them. And then you just inject everybody else that they have, coming back. You mentioned, the kind of the leaders of the team, and that's Hunter and Stefanovic, blended in with some of the young guys that got a lot of experience last year. There's really a lot. I mean, you'd have to really dig deep to find something that you didn't like about this Purdue team. I mean, everything and everybody kind of stands out in their own way, and it's hard to find a negative. I'm sure Matt Painter will during all the practices leading up to games, but they do on paper, and based on what we saw last year, they have a really solid team right now.
And what they have, Mike, is balance, which is rare in college basketball. They have the bigs inside. They have Edey, who can make his free throws, who has a nice touch. Williams is a bull in a china shop. They have guards. They can make threes. Purdue, obviously under Matt Painter and all the way back to Gene Cady, always plays great defense. Last year, Purdue ranked 26 in the country per Ken Pom, adjusted offensive efficiency, 34th in defense. And I think what is really key in today's college basketball game, they held opponents from beyond the three-point line. They held opponents in the Big Ten to just 31.9% from deep. So I just think there are some teams that like to run, Mike, and they can shoot the threes. There are some teams with big front lines. Purdue has that balance because Edey and Williams are not traditional bigs. They have touch around the rim, and they can do so many things.
Well, Trevion's an excellent passer, as we've come to see. He had 8 assists, I think, in one game last year. I swear he has eyes in the back of his head because his passes are right on. But there are times where he just needs to take over inside, like the Michigan State game and a couple other games last year, instead of trying to be a little bit too flashy. Just Matt Painter always preaches this to all us: just be simple, just be simple, do the simple things, and everything will work out. But I think what will really help this team next year is the 2 freshmen that are going to contribute, Caleb First and Trey Kaufman-Renn. I really, because they can play a combination of the 4 and the 5 and the 3 and the 4. They'll even be stronger on the boards, I think. And it just kind of gives them some serious punch coming off the bench.
And it shows the recruiting that Purdue has. Trey Kaufman, Caleb First, number 1 and number 2 in the state of Indiana, are coming in now and should be fantastic. Talk about, Mike, their non-conference schedule. I think it's finally getting materialized here. Some schools release certain games early, certain games late. But last year, of course, Clemson, Miami, before they got into the big schedule. Talk about their non-conference schedule and how they're going to take what is absolutely a top 10 team and how they're going to prime them for Big Ten conference play.
Well, their Big Ten ACC game is against Florida State at Mackey Arena, which I know a lot of Purdue people were disappointed because they thought they'd probably get Duke at home.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Knowing that those two teams would be at the top of their conferences, but that didn't happen. The other thing, too, they played Florida State, whether in another tournament or the ACC Challenge, a few times over the last several years. So Purdue fans were kind of hoping for maybe a different opponent, but it'll be a good game. It'll be a good challenge. Florida State's always one of the top teams in the country. And then their marquee non-conference event is going to be the Hall of Fame tournament in Connecticut. They'll play North Carolina on Saturday I think it's November 20th, and then they'll play either Villanova or Tennessee the next day. So they're going to get tested probably three games into their non-conference season, about where they're at. The thing about that tournament, there's going to be a team that finishes that tournament 0-2, but could still make the Final Four. That's how good that tournament is, and they have a game against Butler in the last Crossroads Classic that'll be played between the 4 Indiana schools, and then during their non-conference season, they'll have a couple Big Ten games in there, probably in early December, to kind of complete a tough stretch for them, because they'll go from the Big Ten ACC Challenge into the Big Ten, play a couple Big Ten games, and then come back out. So they've got some tests ahead of them in the non-conference, and then when you get into the 20-game conference season, that thing's going to challenge you in a lot of different ways.
Mike, I can't thank you for a few minutes here. One more question, then we will get you out of here. I remember the Purdue team with E'Twaun Moore, Robbie Hummel, that came into the NCAA tournament. I absolutely thought that was a Final Four team or possibly a national championship team. I thought they had it all. Then they had the injury, of course. I believe it was like 2009, 2010, they're 29-6, something like that. This team has the look of that type of team with those pieces. Matt Painter, tremendously successful in his time at Purdue. He's had back-to-back Sweet 16s, followed by an Elite Eight with that incredible game, of course, with Carson Edwards against Virginia. What are the preseason goals here? What do you think? What are the fans hoping for? Is this a Final Four or bust year? What's the expectations here with the Boilermakers as we head into the season?
The expectations are pretty high, and I think getting to a Final Four is what people want to see. And as you mentioned, they have the talent to do it, but a lot of teams have the talent to do it. But on the other hand, they're going to lose some games in the season. It's college basketball. It happens. Can't wig out if you get upset or in a Big Ten game or something like that. I think Purdue should be right there till the very end in the Big Ten, along with Michigan. Michigan and Purdue, I think, will be the popular choices to win the Big Ten right now. I think everything that you can set as a high goal, I think this is what this team wants to accomplish, and that would be a Big Ten regular season championship. They're still valued in this part of the country. Regular season titles for conference, they're valued very much. You try to win the Big Ten tournament as well, and then get yourself in a position in the NCAA tournament that you can carve a path out to get to the Sweet 16, get to the Elite Eight, at least have an opportunity then to get to a Final Four, which is something that this program hasn't accomplished in a long time, and this is probably the year that they get it done.
Mike Carmin, folks, Journal Courier, Purdue football, hoops, women's hoops. You need something, you go to Mike Carmin. He gave us a few minutes here for the Boilermakers. They are a top 10 team in the country. They have great balance, a great coach in Matt Painter, tremendous tradition, and are eyeing a deep run in that NCAA tournament, possibly to a Final Four or better. Mike, thanks so much for a few minutes, folks. Follow him on Twitter at Carmin, CARMIN_JC. Mike, thanks so much. Hopefully we'll catch up during the season as well.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
I'm addicted to the appetite. It's seat in the van.